Um, can you guys hear me? Good morning. Good morning. Just do a hi, a wave if you can hear me. I just want to make sure you guys can hear me loud and clear. So we're doing an early Twitter space. See how this goes because the judge has he has a Dr. Martin Luther King event this afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this is not going to be a 3 hour. This is not going to be a 3 hour show. Mm. This is not going to be a 3 hour show. Probably an hour and a half. So we're going to talk about some things. Is there an agenda? Why is he tweeting? And if time permits, definitely people to come up and comment. And actually, as we're talking, people can request to come up because this is probably going to be like 90 minutes because he has somewhere to go, which is why we did it earlier instead of later, because who knows what, how long that event is going to last. But I'm curious to see the numbers with him when he does a show in the morning. And I just called him, so he's logging on. It just always takes a minute because of his Wi-Fi. But hi, Nikki. Hi, Hosh I51. Love Yourself Massage. Technically, that's me. And Christopher, hello. Can you guys please share, retweet this space in your Twitter accounts? I think I did as well. Let me make sure. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Share via tweet. Yeah, tweet it out. Okay. Hi, Jet. Good morning. The judge will be on shortly. So it's 11:12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Um, we'll probably end at 12:45, a little over 90 minutes, because it's already 10 minutes past 10. It's almost 15 minutes past 11. So we're in at 12:45. But also, if anybody, I don't know how to do that post stuff in a Jumbotron thing just yet, but if anybody could post a clip of Mark Lamont Hill and Michael Eric Dyson, because I didn't get a chance to see what was said. Because I know that they were trending, so he loves to talk. So I hope you stick to the 90 minutes. Well, he has somewhere to go, Nikki. I just read your comment. He has somewhere to go, so he's going to have to stick to the 90 minute. And I need to work better, even on the damn hashtags. I really do. Hashtag white supremacy bill. So yeah, so if anybody has the clip of what was going viral on Twitter with Mark Lamont Hill and Michael Eric Dyson, people were clowning them about, can you please share it on the Jumbotron? Because I don't know how to share it. Also, the judge sent me an article about a white supremacy bill, a bill that's against white supremacy act. I hate when people actually, I'm about to silence my damn phone because that texting is getting on my nerves. It always takes them a minute. And honestly, I didn't start this to like 10 minutes after. Let me see if I could pull it up. Representative Jackson, Sheila Jackson Lee. News. Is it even here? Let's see. White supremacy bill. It's funny that you don't, if you Google it, it's not coming up. So I'm gonna have to pull up the article that the judge said. Can you guys let me know if you can hear me? Actually, I could do it this way. Is it even here? Let's see. Lights. Okay, yeah, you can hear me. There he goes. And let me request him as co-host. Hello.
Okay, checking in.
Hi, good
Good
morning.
morning. Good morning.
So we usually do this Twitter space on a Monday evening, but you have a busy day today. You have a Dr. Martin Luther King event because today is Monday, the Dr. Martin Luther King holiday. Yesterday was his birthday. Do you want to tell people a little bit about your event and your thoughts on Martin Luther King Day?
Perhaps we need to not make it Martin Luther King Day, but make it something more encompassing to all of the rest of the black men and women who've done something for the cause, kind of like we don't have Washington's birthday or Lincoln's birthday anymore. We've got President's Day. I am not pleased that nothing has been done for the likes of Frederick Douglass, Malcolm X, and such like. And what we have is a focus on one individual, which, from my experience, see, there are things in this picture that aren't obvious today, and that was black people were presumed to be too stupid to do anything collectively. They had to have an outside agitator or somebody come in, a Moses, to try and move us along because we would not move ourselves along. And that was insulting, and it was not true. And this fits right in with that picture.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, when he was assassinated, we of my generation, the baby boomers, and I was the second year of that surge, and I had just gotten old enough to vote. You had to be 21 in those days. And we were more disturbed by Malcolm getting taken out, H. Rap Brown being locked up, and things like that than we were about Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, my involvement got a lot more intimate when years later I became the last judge on this matter of James Earl Ray. And I'd look at what we're going on, and I find it absolute. I look at what's going on now, and I find it absolutely farcical that the Black Caucus and black people have not created hell to get to the bottom of what happened to him. It wasn't James Earl Ray that killed him. J. Edgar Hoover, who has a federal building, the FBI building in Washington, D.C., named after him, set this in motion. His FBI acquired the murder weapon and the ammunition and recruited the two-man hit team provided the cover so that this could be done from the fire station, not the flop house, not the bushes, and misguided the American public into reality for all of these decades. Now, that's how I look at today. So, with that said, this is not a wowee whoopee moment for me.
Right. But how should the rest of us celebrate this holiday or not?
Why
Could
are
you
we
just
celebrating?
okay? So this is where I'm getting at. I remember a time, let's say 10 years ago and earlier than that. This day, it was people were celebrating what you just described to where they don't even talk about it. They don't even care, especially young people. They don't even care. Everybody was talking about Jaguar Wright having a meltdown all over YouTube and social media and Instagram, right? They don't even care anymore about the Black movement, Black power, they don't care. So should we so I get what you're saying. Why are we celebrating just this one person and not collectively? But they're not even celebrating a collective.
I know it. And see, we have Kwanzaa that we celebrate. I understand why people celebrate Kwanzaa, but it was started by somebody that allegedly was involved in doing the same kind of dirty, filthy work for the FBI, and in this case, LAPD's SIS unit, that resulted in Malcolm being taken away and other folk like him being taken out of the picture. So, what are we doing? I mean, it should be something along the lines of Memorial Day, where we recognize and commemorate those who have made the ultimate sacrifice or close to it, trying to make the nation what it is, or at least keep it free from outside uh, conquest,
Mm-hmm.
and or restore the union after a civil war. I get that, but we don't do it that way.
Right.
And have these
Sorry.
"we shall overcome" marches, which are just garbage, because after a century of "we shall overcome someday," it just hasn't gotten here. So it's time to do something else.
You said after we shall overcome someday. Well, right. I remember the first time. I remember my grandmother. She died many decades ago, but she's from Georgia, outside of Atlanta. And growing up as a kid, she was like, "Yeah, I've met him. I know him, Martin Luther King." And I was like, "Really?" As if she met this big time celebrity. It was a time where we looked to those activists as celebrities, to whereas that's non-existent now, right? They were just held at a higher regard. The whole movement, it was respected and it was held at a higher regard, to where there is zero. Now, I will give credit to Tariq Nasheed. You know, he is making it more modern, whether people agree with it or not, but he's in the media. So, but again, that's just one person. It's totally different now. And it was just an observation for me, the way I see how we are celebrating this holiday today is basically non-existent.
It's not a holiday. It should be a day of mourning, recognizing that we have been remiss as a people
Mm-hmm.
and not demanded and made hell for non-compliance with that demand, that something be done to get to the bottom of this.
Right. somebody requested. So I think as people request, I'm gonna bring them in because I know you have an event to go to. So I'm gonna bring this Juliana in, and then I'm gonna go into the next conversation. Is that okay, Judge?
Go right ahead.
All right. Who is this? I'm sorry, Juliana. Yeah, I said it right. Julianus. Julianus. Did I say your name right?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. It's a moniker, Julian Assange. I just spelled it
Oh,
differently.
okay.
Um, but thank you for taking my, what do you call this, a call?
I know, right? I know speaker. I don't know request. Yeah.
Um, uh, yeah. Hi, Judge. I wanted to
Hi
ask,
there.
uh, how do you feel about, well, it's not really recent, but from what I can see, the Black Lives Matter, I guess what you can call a riot. Um, how do you see that sort of being maybe a continuation of the struggle and sort of how it's been co-opted?
Well, I am not unfamiliar with the Black Lives Matter thing and what they are doing. 55 years ago, more than a half century ago, all across the country, when young people were very, very much engaged in the discrepancies between what America actually did and what it was supposed to be standing for, whether it was SDS, Students for Democratic Society, the Brown Berets, which is a Chicano thing, the Native American movement or the Asian movement or the anti-war movement or the Black Power thing. We had those that we would talk about who pimped the movement, pimped the revolution, however you did it, hustled it, or because of their own character lack, they were informants, snitches, or other things, not when it came to informing on fellow criminals, but when it came to oppressing and suppressing people who were trying to make viable and necessary change in this system. So as soon as I saw it, I coined BFM, Black Folk Matter, rather than Black Lives Matter, because I recognized it as a hustle. I did what I always do, which is go to the source. And the source was, what do they say about themselves? And I watched them get bigger, and then they started telling on themselves. And after they got through with their frou-frou introduction on their website, the first thing that they had was, quote, "We are for the destruction of the traditional nuclear family." And then it went downhill from that. And I said, "Oh, I know what's going on. This is just a fundraising cover." I kept reading and I went through their site over a couple of days. And then the next thing I wound up noticing was, we are a fundraising organization for two other entities besides ourselves. One of them is Act Blue, which was a Democratic Party fundraising organization. And the other one they stipulated was LGBTQIA plus, of which we are an affiliate. So I said, oh, well, each of these entities has a right to be politically active and raise funds, but it is a really bastard thing that they're doing here, those two entities relying upon the flashpoint Black Lives Matter as a fundraising rallying point and concealing that from the people. The site then went on to say 1/3 of each dollar you send our fundraising efforts goes to each of these entities. 1/3 to us, 1/3 to Act Blue, and 1/3 to LGBT. They also, when I went into it, advertised that consult with and evoke their services to organize, provide transportation and communication for protest and demonstrations. And I said, okay, they need to be investigated because they're causing this lawlessness and this public violence that for a year and a half resulted in all of these places getting burnt down, vandalized, and damaged, and people hurt. Not so much to do something about protesting police misconduct, but to come up with something that on their site was clearly devoted to the Democratic Party platform of getting rid of evil boss Trump. And that's what I looked at. And I said, this is nothing but a bait and switch game here. And it's bastardized because when you had Kaepernick going down on one knee, or you had Lewis Hamilton on the way to an unprecedented seventh world championship in Formula One, directing protest, and around the country and the world, you had this simpatico thing with the black plight in America, and here are the people that have snatched the title for this, Black Lives Matter, and they're pimping it and criminally hustling it. That I did not like. And I have spoken against that. And it's not the most popular thing, but you cannot get anywhere if what you're doing is based on a lie. And people have to say to themselves, what is the truth? But the truth is hard to come by. You've got charlatans like Mark Lamont Hill out there trying to pontificate on getting at the truth, and he's one of the main sources of misinformation. But that gave me a laugh yesterday when I read some of what got posted on Twitter by him, a pontification about doing the right thing and how you had to be cautious of those who were anti-intellectual. And then he's putting in a thing which doesn't have anything necessarily wrong about it, about you can be intellectual without the degrees and the background. And I said, I understand now one of his driving engines, he doesn't have the degrees nor the background. He's a stupid idiot and a pimp of the movement. But he put it out there because he's got some personal issues with it. I see now. I found that very laughable, but it is what it is. So we have our things that we need to get into.
So,
if that answers your question.
Julian Assange, quick last word, and then I'm gonna move on to Textwell and bring in another subject, and then bring up two more requested people because we're short on time today. Go ahead.
Sure, thank you. I guess just along with that, I see it more as, a co-option of the narrative. Like, I think it started out, genuine. I mean, you don't go out there and riot, and you're putting yourself in danger when you're doing that. Like, you are facing, the police, which will kill you. And when you're out there being violent. So I do feel that it was a genuine. It started out very genuine. It's more the co-option of the narrative, and that whole thing. Like, how do you do that? If someone high up, is doing that, and sort of like, how do you get over that? You know what I mean? But thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, I want to go to Textwell, and then I want us to go into that article, Judge, that you sent me with Representative Sheila Jackson Lee Post, she introduced a law against white supremacy act, and I want your thoughts on the Wells Fargo. But text well, and then I'll go to brother.
Thank you, Sister Dana. Thank you, brother Judge JB, future mayor. I would say I agree with your assessment of the Black Lives Matter movement. These people, they squandered political capital that could have really been used to end the racist race soldiers in blue murdering innocent Black people. All the people that went to the marches and all the white people who were throwing money at them. They had millions of white people. I was on the avenue one day in my town in New Jersey, and the white people were lined up for like 10 square blocks with signs out there on the avenue in suburban New Jersey. They were Democratic operatives, obviously, because if they really were trying to save Black lives, they would have told all the people at the marches and all the people that were donating money to, when you leave the march, I want you to contact your legislator and demand that qualified immunity be abolished. But that didn't happen. And then they scared white folks to death when, like Judge Joe says, they wanted to, what they want to abolish, defund the police, abolish capitalism, tear down the system with these wacky way out messagings that they had, and they squandered all that political capital. And then when they got their man Joe Biden in, he wouldn't even return their phone call. And so, yes, a big travesty. I just want to say, just because someone is pumping their fists in the air and talking loud through a megaphone, don't follow them unless they have a clear plan to go forward in terms of how they're going to affect policy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate your commentary. So Wells Fargo, Wells Fargo cutting back on mortgages will focus on lending to minorities. Wells Fargo, once the number one player in lending out mortgages, announced it was taking a step back from its previous goal of reaching as many Americans as possible. Instead, it will now focus on home loans for existing bank and wealth management customers and borrowers in minority communities, right? So the bank will focus its home lending business to individuals and families in minority communities. What are your thoughts on that? Because honestly, that's not going to help, quote unquote, the Black community, if we even really have a community. That's not going to that's not going to create generational wealth for us, because minority means every single person who is not Anglo-Saxon, right? LGBTQAI is a minority. White women are considered minorities. So, and then now it's the narrative. It was going on Twitter, a hashtag white people are being discriminated against, right? But I want you to comment on that and the law against white supremacy act, the article you sent me yesterday that Representative Sheila Jackson Lee is going to introduce to Congress.
And she's already introduced. She's already filed it. And it's despicable because anytime something like that is introduced, you run into a real danger that it will pass. And anytime you get something like that, it's a very, very sharp, very much a two-edged sword that can swing the other way. And it would quickly be put to use wrecking the interest of Blacks and other minorities. You cannot destroy the First Amendment to save somebody from hurt feelings.
So let me just, I'm sorry.
The other thing with Wells Fargo, that's the act. I think it is just despicably stupid. And I'm embarrassed that anybody that looks like me, associated with me, would do anything that ignorant. Now, The next thing is Wells Fargo. Now, some of this I get from sources I won't disclose. But part of the problem is that a decade and a half ago, when we had this mortgage debacle driven by Soros and other people, and the bottom was falling out of that, Wells Fargo wound up, I would say, acquiring a significant load of mortgages. They didn't exactly like them, but they didn't want them. But it was part of a deal they got into with the government to help things out. And they still have those mortgages and they aren't quite sure what to do with them. They have expanded into a reach out program because it is an unused market. American banks can extend credit, have accounts as large as they want. Their ledger books can have as much on them as they want, so long as they are backed up by a certain percentage of cash on deposit. A lot of local banks that ought to be extending lines of credit to minorities and other groups cannot, because the governmental entities, the counties, the boroughs, the municipalities, the cities, the courts, and the agencies that are located within them tend to deposit most of their funds with one local or state bank. That means nobody else has the cash on deposit to extend large lines of credit, financing, mortgages, and stuff like that. That particularly, in fact, impacts small businessmen of all ethnicities and minority homeowners. So Wells Fargo, along with Bank of America, a new giant coming into the picture, regions in the southeast part of the United States, have deep pockets, and they have these markets that they had not looked at that provide them with money-making opportunities. And it's sort of like what Hollywood did with the blaxploitation movie industry 50 years ago, 55 years ago, that there is an enormous amount of money out there that is untapped. And when we have a need, we should go after it. Now, movies like Black Panther and such blaxploitation things come out when entities like Walt Disney and their affiliated ABC are behind a financial eight ball, in this case, due to an enormous judgment taken against them some years ago. They exploit these opportunities, these cash cows. And Wells Fargo has had some internal difficulties over the last several years. And I imagine that they need a cash cow, and this is an opportunity to go after it. I don't think they anticipated the nascent backlash from the way this is being characterized that is developing right now.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
stay tuned. It ought to be interesting. But I think if I were somebody involved, I'd go investigate, because there is a possibility that they might be into consolidating mortgages first and second and coming up with some interesting fixed interest rates for you. So it wouldn't hurt to look into it.
Right. I want to go to brother Hayes, and because you did comment something underneath the Twitter space, brother Hayes, that I would like for you to expound on.
Hello, Judge, Honorable Judge Brown. Hello, Dana. Thank you very much for adding me as a speaker. Good morning. I'm from I'm originally from Indiana, but I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, in the South here. And my main thing is, what politically, what do FBA, black folks, what's the best path for them politically? Because it seems like, when we go the Democrat way, it's, hey, we get bonuses, but we don't necessarily get that, that reparation, or maybe we have potential for some ups, with money come in, funding come in, but of course, like y'all said, includes everyone else. But hey, at least we get something. But on the other side, for instance, with the farmers bill for paying off the debts, you have GOP suing the hell out of that right now, blocking that from that money getting to the farmers. Affirmative action, you have again, that's being brought up in the courts again, trying to block that, trying to, again, prevent blacks from, well, not all need it, but, it definitely, does, there's definitely pure good data that suggests that it helps. So, I mean, is there really, what politically, what can be done specifically for the black community, or is it basically we're on our own here in the United States and really nothing politically, or just take the gains where we can get them?
How many Democrats said no to the farmers bill as well? Do you have the numbers? Was it all Republicans or was it a mixture?
Currently, there's no Democrats taking it to the Supreme Court or taking it to the court suing it. So I didn't say no. I said suing it from being active. So currently, some guy who used to work under Trump took it to the courts and saying, "Hey, this is unconstitutional."
Took what to court?
The $6 billion funding that was going to go to the black farmers.
Wait, so was it the black farmers that took it to court, and it was the Trump administration that was fighting against it?
Wait, I'm sorry. Why would the black farmers take it to the court?
Okay, it's because how can Congress sue?
Who said Congress? Who said Congress?
I thought you said it in your comment.
Who said what?
Listen.
I think
if you stop with the pot stirring the grits, you can listen. I thought you said in your comments that the GOP was blocking a bill for $8 billion for black farmers.
So there was a bill that was introduced, and actually, a GOP lawyer is now suing that bill.
Okay, so I need to ask the judge: can a GOP lawyer sue a bill that I guess the Democrats introduced?
That's not what he's saying. In other words, he's talking about somebody intervening in court, through court, in an attempt to block the bill becoming effective, if such a bill comes into play. Now, let me tell you, see, affirmative action has been screwed because of how it got phrased. I was involved in the startup on this. At the end of the 60s, at the University of California system, and there are many campuses involved in that. I was at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA. And I was in law school. And we had an affirmative action program in place that was effective and would have withstood the strictest judicial scrutiny because it was congruent with the California state constitution and longstanding admissions policy. Up at University of California, Berkeley's medical school, they had a handful of black aspirants who wanted to be doctors, and they worked up a deal with the administration up there that would allow them in, but set the stage to destroy the affirmative action process for other people. What that was is this. Historically, admission to the University of California was based on this, quote, a competitive assessment of grade point average, comma, aptitude test, and or other factors that indicate an ability to succeed. They typically use that other factors to admit athletes who did not come up to the very rigorous admission standards that were in effect at the time. The law school said that's fine. The medical school people said no, it discriminates against what would now be termed boule background black people. And it invites a political test when you talk about ability to succeed otherwise. And that, though, was in line with the California Constitution that says these institutions of higher learning are.
What
Air.
happened?
Somebody tried to call. These universities are not just there for academic purposes, but they're there to develop leadership so that their respective communities can have maximized fallout from them being.
Somebody still trying to call you?
What I'm saying was this. Somebody tried to call again. I get a lot of these calls.
You got to put your phone on
It
silent.
doesn't work that way. If the call comes in anyway, it screws it up. That was my maid. She's here. Anyway,
okay.
It's this. It's this. It's this. What happens is that this constitutional mandate to develop leadership, and it specifically talks about in the colored communities, it says in the Constitution, our colored brethren, so recently enslaved and still subject to recapture in many places in this country. The Chinese population, our Mexican brothers who are subject to gang controls and violence, etc., they need leadership. And the law school said we should have these affirmative action programs to develop leadership. Our rationale was, look, faculty, some of you have daughters. And at 2:17 a.m. in the morning, they stupidly got low on gas and they had to get off the freeway to tank up. Who do you want in control of the communities they find themselves in? The thugs, the gangsters, the drug dealers, the ne'er-do-wells, or do you want a responsible leadership cadre that runs things? So it's for the interest of all people as expressed in this state's constitution. The medical students said, well, some of us, we had to go participate in the frat activities, and we are black, so you should just take a fixed number of black people without this test of other factors. We said, no, that's going to wind up being reverse discrimination. Because if you just take somebody who is black and they don't match the regular admission standards, that's going to be prohibited by court action very quickly. So they said, well, to hell with you guys in law school. You think you know everything. Yeah, well, we know the law. So predictably, what happened is Berkeley let them in where they did not have the other factors. They didn't have situations where they had to work their way through college by essentially having to have a full-time job or having families to raise or relatives to help out or a hellacious neighborhood they lived in to overcome. They just were people from backgrounds that happened to be black that ought to have been getting in through regular admissions, like incidentally I did. So when they set this up, we knew what was going to happen. We had the Bakke case where they didn't even deal with the California Constitution because they avoided it. And we've got affirmative action destroyed as a concept because it basically says these days, just because you are black or a minority, you get preference over other people who beat you when it comes to the admission standards. The way it used to be when affirmative action was conceptualized was there was no difference in the admission standards. It was competitive assessment of grade point average and aptitude test as it was for everybody else. But when you had a hardship, a demonstrated hardship in terms of your work requirements, your family requirements, your neighborhood and upbringing and educational circumstances that were much harder than those or much worse than those faced by your normal applicant, then to get as far as you had gotten demonstrated an ability to succeed was otherwise not reflected by just mere academics. So when they went around and did that, you had folk like Justice Clarence Thomas, who was an aspiring law student at the time, who got in Yale, a place that tried to recruit me because I could get in their front door, to set up a minority program, which they did a couple of years after I started at UCLA. They put him out there to sustain his presence at the university because of academic difficulties he was having. And they had him talk against affirmative action every summer. And then when he got out of law school, he was waived into the bar because he got out of Yale. And they sent him around talking against affirmative action along with other people. And they rewarded him by putting him over EEOC at too young an age. He was still in his 20s. And he had never practiced law, never been in a court, but they put him over EEOC to kill it. And that's when that narrative back 1978, 79, 1980, when he got put in over EEOC, started getting spread around the country about affirmative action being just because you're a minority, even though you don't match the standards that everybody else did. That was not affirmative action. Affirmative action, and this is the important thing, was a declaration and recognition that there are other factors that indicate an ability to succeed besides the straight academic ones. And they locked us into that posture, and affirmative action has been dead on arrival ever since.
Well,
by the way, that ought to be something that's looked at in terms of a reparative or reparations, being able to correct
can you hold that for our Thursday show?
non-monetary reparations. But I'm lengthy on that, and sorry for
no.
at great length. But it's important to understand how this got set up. This anti-affirmative action movement was the
somebody say something to him because he can't hear
of a handful of black students trying to selfishly get around the fact that they did not apply themselves when they had the chance.
Can you hear me?
I was there. We had meetings with these students. Yes, go ahead.
Tell him to drop down and come back up because he can't hear me.
Your Honor, would you drop down and come back up? You can't hear the host. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't know why this always happens, and I guess sometimes it happens. Drop down to speaker, and then I'm gonna bring you back up. Wait a minute. Don't go all the way out. Wait a minute. Let's see. Remove from co-host. Yes, and then I'm gonna bring you back up. Wait a minute. invite to co-host. All right. Let's see if that works. It's something with the connection. All right, Judge. So see if you could accept co-host again. You got it? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You
Sorry
can hear
for
me?
that. I
Okay,
don't know. I
so
couldn't hear
no,
you.
no. It wasn't you. It's something when you know how sometimes when somebody call you and your phone go in and out, then for some reason you can't hear me after that. So then I got to drop you down to listener and bring you back up as co-host.
I'm sorry for the lengthy thing, but this.
I was saying, well, I wanted to say to you was, I definitely want us to talk about that in more detail, affirmative action, especially with the Supreme Court case that's active right now on Thursday's show, because I think that's very important because you added a lot of factors into that. And by the way, Nikki is laughing at you.
Yeah, I got that. I can see.
Mhm.
Here's the other thing. See, a lot of what goes wrong with our circumstances as a people in this country is how the thing gets phrased. Affirmative action was not getting an inferior student. It was removing a form of segregation and discrimination, which was this: if you apply these standards to everybody else, especially for the benefit of student athletes who may not have the academic credentials to get in your typical university, if you apply them to everybody across the board, there are some unique special circumstances that apply to minorities that ought to be considered. The same way you say this guy's ability to run with a football should qualify him for admissions at a state university. So we just wanted a non-discriminatory application of those other factors, which would have kept us in the game, except these selfish bastards didn't want that.
Mm-hmm. I want to swing back real quick to the Black farmers because what brother had brought up, that is another conversation I think for the next Twitter space we need to expound on. And I'm gonna come to you, Texwell. But
could I say something very briefly? 30 seconds on that one. Thomas Burrell, who was the father of the modern Black farmers movement, was a client of mine. And we went through all kinds of hell because they kept trying to railroad him, scapegoat him, indict him. And I had to get indictments dismissed because they were trying to block him. And we went around the state trying to get rid of some injustices. I can remember one case. A young lady inherited 80,000 acres of farmland, and some bozos were renting this farmland for can you believe this? Less than $250 a year for 80,000 acres of land. And we had to get that settled and go to court and all kinds of stuff. And we even wound up in situations where there was one confrontation we had where somebody had to go get on a motorcycle and use a pay phone to call the sheriff. They didn't have cell phones in those days. And when the sheriff gets there, I got a briefcase on the pickup truck hood with the court order in it. And I got a gun in one hand, a 357 and a 45 in the other. And everybody has got guns level, and the sheriff is hollering, hey, everybody drop them muzzles. No shooting here, no shooting. What's going on? See, it's intense stuff when you come to what has happened to the farmers around here. And right now, somebody seems to have forgotten that again.
Well, so recently, as of December 6, 2022, Black farmers sued government for promise of federal aid. So the federal government has illegally broken a promise to pay off the debts of a group of Black farmers, according to a class action lawsuit. The group hopes to put pressure on officials to keep their word and to restore funding that was dropped after a group of white farmers filed legal challenges arguing legal charges Yeah, I hate, stop interrupting me because now I gotta find where I was just reading. A group hopes to put pressure on officials to keep their word and to restore funding that was dropped after a group of white farmers filed legal charges arguing their exclusion was a violation of their constitutional right. I want to scroll down real quick and I want to read this part because it's important. Um, the lawsuit filed by Ben Crump, a Florida-based civil rights attorney known for representing Black families like George Floyd and Black families killed by police, stems from congressional approval of $5 billion in debt relief for thousands of farmers of color. The money was included in a $1.9 trillion COVID-19 stimulus package in 2021. So to your point, brother, that stimulus package was approved under the Trump administration. So I'm reading the facts here because it wasn't a lawyer from the Trump administration or Congress going against this bill. It was white farmers in the states. White farmers in several states then filed lawsuits arguing that the law violated their rights, which prompted judges to halt the program in June of 2021. So we need to make sure that we lay out the facts on who's suing who. It was the Black farmers suing the federal government, and then the white farmers from several states came together to counter that, saying it violated their rights.
No, unfortunately, that's not correct. The reason why
so
the Black
show me
farmers,
your source. Wait. Show me, tell me where you got your source from before we go any further. Tell me where you got your source from. Because when we're talking about lawsuits, a lawyer from the Trump administration doesn't file a lawsuit against a bill that same administration approved. So I got confused when you were saying
Dana, what he's talking about is this. It may be that a lawyer who was affiliated with the Trump administration more than 2 years ago has gotten involved.
No, this lawsuit is just this year because they were granted.
Listen, no, you're missing the point.
Representing who, though? Representing who? Who was that lawyer representing?
Listen.
The white farmers?
Listen. Representative or lawyer or Senator John Doe, who was closely affiliated with the Trump administration, hypothetically, 3 years ago, may in 2022 or 2023 take an opposite position. That's what lawyers do.
Right. No, so this is the point. No, Judge, I'm not arguing with that. This is where I'm going with it.
Now, one other point I want to put out here.
Wait, real quick before you get to your point. This is where I'm going with it because when we see headlines are printed in a certain way for a certain reason to trigger people because people don't read and don't research beyond that headline. It's very subjective. So it's just because that lawyer, who that lawyer representing these white farmers may be, if that lawyer was an affiliate for the Trump administration but was no longer, does not mean it was the Trump administration that was filing a lawsuit to block it.
Doesn't mean it's a Trump administration. It means somebody who may have been with the administration.
Right, but that's what I mean. That when you're saying stuff about who's suing who, it is good, but it's a responsibility to be a little more accurate on who is suing who exactly.
All right, now may I put something in this mix to avoid a trap? When you have to cite your sources, the reason that you do that academically is so that the person who is listening to your argument can peruse the resource or the authority himself or herself and determine whether he gets or she gets the same conclusions that you got.
Yes.
Now, ordinarily, that's not necessary because, let's put it this way, the common law is the fundamental law of the United States of America in every state except Louisiana. The common law is not written law. The common law is the knowledge that's in the heads of lawyers and judges. And I might be able to, with an hour's worth of research, come up with the cases that resulted in a common law principle being established. But for the 50 some years I've done this as a profession, I've pretty much memorized the principles. I can tell them to you, as can others, but it might be problematical of reaching out and saying this is the case where it comes from.
The reason why I say cite sources is not for me to prove that you're wrong. No, it's me trying to understand what you're saying.
But we have to also understand too that by the logic that is displayed by the person that wants to make a point, we should rely on that, because right now we've fallen into a very bad trap. People write books that can be essentially self-published, and the books ain't shit if you read them. But we take those books as authority for establishing a point when the books themselves are bullshit. See, we still have a carryover from that. It is written, therefore it is, which is bullshit in these days. Now,
right, you have to have
the smartest people I know, some of the most logical lawyers, doctors, ordinary people that are most convincing and have had the most enlightened and most extensive experience in the world and in life, they have never written a book, so they wouldn't be considered by today's world to be an authority. Whereas they might have instructed some damn fools in a class, let's say, or in a training program, or mentor them, and the damn fools become the authority because they wrote it. So we have to be careful of that.
Question. Wait, because we're running low on time. The question too, and then I want to go to text. Well, the question is the white farmers that are countersuing, right? The black farmers, they're saying it violated their rights. How so?
That's the same thing I was explaining earlier, because I knew you were going there with how affirmative action got twisted around from it not being deficient standards, but just alternative standards of the same rigor. And see, we got caught in this trap where a half century after the fact, people are looking at, we have a public interest, which is, if we have to depend upon all of this set of people, which include subsets, for our economic well-being, then it does not do anyone any good when some of them are drugged down. So the same reason that we have other rules in place that benefit certain other specific groups in certain specific parts of the country, we also have rules that benefit people in certain particular types of circumstances. And that helps everybody. But you see, the thing hasn't been cast in that light.
All right. I want to text. Well, you want to say something?
Thank you. I think the flaw was at the initiation of this lawsuit, of the policy, actually, because you cannot simply say farmers of color. That's unconstitutional. If they had worded it in a way that it pertained to descendants of American slavery as a harmed group, historically harmed group, a class, I think that would have been more successful and would be probably impervious to a lawsuit. Do you think?
That's a good question, and I think that's an angle.
That's a good point, but it's a matter of proof. Who constitutes this class?
Okay, so let's swing back to Representative Sheila Jackson Lee with that HR 40. Instead of studying it, how about, so doesn't that go back to studying reparations and actually implementing, who gets who's a freedman, who's not?
Well, there are two things she joined. She joined in on a request for a study of reparations.
No. Just going back to the black. If we have if that were to have passed when it should have passed, or even passed today, can that apply to what Texwell just saying with
Now,
far?
here's the problem with what she's done, and the whole damn inefficient, inept Black Caucus is not done. Over all of these years, you're trying to tell me that you want to get elected as a Black person to represent Black people, at least in part, and you've never had the wherewithal or the common sense or the energy or the motivation over all these years not to have done your own intensive research on the subject. So you hit the ground running with specific proposals rather than coming up with the lame bullshit of we need to have a study. 3 years ago, we had 2 weeks worth of circus from the Black Caucus about whether or not to have a study. So what happened in the interim? See, this is just grandstanding crap, which doesn't do anything except stir up a lot of nasty stuff that gets nobody anywhere closer to resolving the reparations question.
So and now I'm going to go back to you, brother, if you want to have any closing remarks. U.S. Congressman Sheila Jackson Lee has presented the 18th district, represented 18th district, Texas, blah, blah, blah. She is the sole sponsor of House Bill 61, which she introduced January 9th, 2023. She titled the bill Leading Against White Supremacy Act of 2023. It calls for a new type of federal hate crime conspiracy charge that only white people can be charged with. It says that individuals can be charged with a white supremacy inspired hate crime for crimes or plots that had no actual knowledge of. Interesting. Okay, I want to have brother have.
In other words, they're trying to do the same thing that they were doing to Trump on January 6th, which is why I said over the years, there is no sound legal basis on which to go forward with a prosecution of him, because you just put that in there. That was the issue that they are trying to overcome, and why nobody can prosecute Trump, because he had no knowledge of these people who might have been listening, and it was not specifically intended to have that. And that's where it flops. And if you are in Congress and you are so stupidly ignorant of the Constitution you swore to uphold by taking that office, you don't need to be there. And that's so damnably discriminatory that doesn't she get it, that if they got that passed, somebody would say either one or two things: it's unconstitutional because it singles out a specific group for disparate treatment, meaning treatment that others are not subjected to, or if they say, well, if white people can be prosecuted for this, then Black people can too. And that would mean that, by the way, a lot of what gets commonly posted on Twitter would result in criminal prosecutions under the proposed federal action that she's talking about.
I want to go to brother. I wanted you to have your last word, brother.
Thank you very much, Dana, and thank you very much, the Honorable Judge Joe Brown, for informing us on what you have. But honestly, I just want to say, I just hope that we can get our wins where we can get them, and whatever path we choose to support or pass, if we have our own, let's just put it, really just put a good foot towards it, and also on the flip side, the path's going to be 10 times harder for us than anyone else, because if you see on the other side what they get away with, how they get their support and such like that, it's just mind blowing. But the path's always 10 times harder for us. So, but we still survive.
I appreciate you bringing up the Black farmers, because that is a topic that we definitely need to keep talking about and staying on top of, because because I don't understand why Black farmers got together to file a lawsuit, Black farmers from different states got together and filed a lawsuit countering that. And now this December, the Supreme Court halted that win for the Black farmers. They halted the Black farmers lawsuit because of the white farmers counter. And that is something we need to actually pay attention to and start speaking more loudly on social media about.
Yep. So, yep. I totally agree. But again, thank you so very much. And I look forward to joining more of these in the future and doing what I can, doing my part. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, the Honorable Judge Joe.
Thank you. I appreciate you joining.
Thank
anybody
you,
else want to request?
That's very good. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
How much time you have, Judge? It's 11:20 where you're at.
I've got at least another 15 minutes.
All right. So do anybody want to request now? Don't request 5 minutes before he got to go. Right now, if you want to request to say anything or ask him anything, do so right now. If not, I'll just let you close it out.
I'd like to add a comment. Thank you. In the 90s, I was a much younger man, and I contacted Mr. John Boyd from the Black Farmers Association. I was trying to get a list of the Black farmers so we could support them independently and have farmers markets and field trips to buy their produce. And I never got a response. And then a farmer on this app, he's a local farmer, like an urban farmer. He told me that the Black Farmers Association really represents big farmers who are trying to do like agribusiness, like, like mechanized farming, and they're really high stakes. They're not like really supporting, like they're not providing food directly to people. But anyway, I think I'm wondering, I like to pose this question. Like, we see HR 40 was proposed by, it was taken up by in Narcan and Cobra. And we see they're really obstructionists because the wording was wrong. They've been sitting on their asses for since the 90s. And I'm wondering, is the Black Farmers Association the agricultural equivalent of Narcan and Cobra? Because if it was really representing Black farmers, I think they would be putting pressure on the Democratic Party and threatening the Democratic Party with withdrawal of their support. But it seems to me like they're just asking without a demand and without threatening without threatening to, basically punish the Democratic Party for not supporting the Black farmers.
Right. Yeah, because it's where's the Democrat Party at supporting Black farmers, trying to, push that agenda. So I guess they feel as though, well, we added them on that COVID relief bill. Congress did their part. So, okay, now it's really back on a state level to, again, when they filed the lawsuit in the Supreme Court, but then you have the white farmers countering it. So, but I mean, again, Congress is made up of our local state representatives. Tank.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm a little late. Good morning, Dana, the rest of the panel, Judge. Salute, brother. How you doing today? Just wanted to drop in and say hello to everybody. I'm a little late.
Hi, Tank.
Hey, Judge. A little late to the party, but I'm enjoying the conversation. I just wanted to, say hello to everyone.
Real quick.
Yes.
Tank, me, Tank, and Dr. A, and even Governor, we did a show yesterday on my YouTube channel, and we were talking about the MLK statue. So this is going to be the last talking point. I want to swing it back to you, Judge. Have you seen that new MLK statue of some arms supposed to be him and his wife that they revealed in Boston over yesterday, and this $10 million sculpture?
I haven't.
You haven't? Oh my God.
Ooh, wait till you see it. Wait a
minute. Okay, so actually, you want me to text it to you now so you could look at it? You didn't hear about that?
Artistic license is what it is, so I'm not expecting a great deal from it, but it might be a great deal. I don't know. I'm more concerned about the fact that this country has this man lauded, and they have a national holiday commemorating him. And nobody has done anything about the fact that the person that solicited his murder has a federal building in Washington, D.C. named after him. It's known as the J. Edgar Hoover Building for the FBI. I was the last judge on that case, and I think we could have gotten a conviction for conspiracy against J. Edgar Hoover had he been brought to trial for murder in the first degree. The FBI set that up. They solicited the hit team. They secured the rifle and the ammunition that was used to kill King, and they covered up what they did. And every time we get people celebrating King, I think it is hypocritical because nobody is trying to get to the bottom of what happened. Now, I'll say that. I'm not worried about statues of King. And by the way, I think people like Frederick Douglass, Malcolm X, and some more of our great Black folk need commemorating as well as King.
All right. So what you got? 7 more minutes. If anybody want to request, please do so now. I am streaming this live on my other YouTube channel, Dana with the Data, and I will drop that link in underneath this Twitter space in the comment section afterwards. So anyone who just joining us want to go back and listen from the beginning. So I don't.
Yeah, I had one thing before you go on that topic. A question for Judge concerning the MLK and the FBI situation. It was reported, and I think I saw this in a documentary concerning Martin Luther King and the investigation that the FBI had on him, that King and J. Edgar Hoover did sit down and have a meeting because the slander about King was going out through the press about his infidelity and things of that nature. What I want to ask Judge, what really came out of that meeting? Because it wasn't like J. Edgar Hoover after the meeting rescinded anything he said. It just like things just kind of just kept on going. I just wanted to get your opinion on that, Judge.
Say that one more time. I had some static on my phone.
Oh, that's okay. I was talking about it's been reported that J. Edgar Hoover and Martin Luther King did have a meeting after the tapes of him came out, some tapes that the FBI were trying to use against him, and they did come together and have a meeting. From what's been reported, I was just curious what possibly came out of that meeting that you may have information about.
Well, those tapes, there are transcriptions of those tapes and a copy of the old reel-to-reel tape that at least one time were in the evidence record here in Shelby County. And I listened to them, so I know what's on them. I read them. It's not nice. I won't go into it at this point, but I'm not privy to what they did or what came out of it. But a lot of times, see, you have to meet with your opposition. It may be hostile. People may be polite. They may not be, but that is not conclusive. Sometimes it's just making somebody an offer they're not supposed to refuse. Sometimes it's just saying, here, this is what's going to happen. Now, we'll be nice about it. Sometimes it's worse than that. So I don't know. But it's a good question. The American public will probably never get an answer, but it's one of those behind the scenes things that I'm sure occurred.
All right. Well, you want to close this out, Judge? Again, guys, please share this. Well, you don't have to share it because it's not recorded. However, I will be putting the I'm actually recording this live, streaming this live on my YouTube, Dana with the Data, and I'm going to add in the link to that underneath this Twitter space, and I'm going to retweet it so anyone who's joining us now can go back and listen from the beginning. This was an earlier and we did this Twitter space starting at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time because the judge has other engagements this evening around the MLK celebrations. And I actually like this morning, early afternoon Twitter space. So I don't know, maybe we'll do it around this time going forward, depends. But thank you everybody for joining us today. And Judge, you have the floor to close us out.
Well, on this day, let us not celebrate, let us commemorate, and let us be reminded that the struggle isn't over. And even if you're not a typical Black American, you should be interested in this, because what gets done to one group can be done to another group. And there is an interesting thing about history. It repeats itself if you don't learn its lessons and keep the negative events from occurring again. Human nature is what it is. And if we don't learn from what we've done in the past, individually, we'd have bad lives. And if we don't learn from the past in a collective sense, we have a collective future that is not good. And we're slipping in this country because we are losing focus on what people need to do to maintain the progress to independence, liberty, freedom, and justice and equity for all. Now, we need to stay focused.
Okay. All right, everybody, enjoy your day off. And those of you who still have to work, listen, and still enjoy your day. And I hope that everyone had gotten something out of this Twitter space. And we will see you on Twitter space next week, Monday. I don't know the time, but go to my YouTube channel, The Real Dana, and you can see the judge live this Thursday, which would be earlier in the day. And yeah, so subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Real Dana, and Dana with the Data on YouTube. And first of all, you forgot, Judge, you're running for mayor of Memphis. Go to www.jjb2023.com. Sign up for the mailing list. Donate to his campaign, because if you don't live in Memphis and you won't be able to vote, you could support with your money. So his Cash App is $ Judge Joe Brown, spell it all the way out, $ Judge Joe Brown 2023. Send him your money, because that's how people a lot of times win elections. You know, you need money. And go to the website, www.jjb2023.com, and sign up to the mailing list so you can stay up to date of his engagements and everything else. And of course, like I said, donate and support. Anything else you want to say?
Well, I'll say this. It's not for me, it's for you. Something needs to be done in this country to turn things around so we do not continue down this rabbit hole we're going down right now. Memphis, Tennessee, due to the geography of the country, is located at what is, in fact, the natural and actual distribution point of this country. It can be a mecca for everybody. And I suspect that when I get in and what I want to do gets put in place, it's going to become the largest city in America by the end of this century. And you might want to come in here and become part of it. So this is an investment in your own future. This is an investment in an experiment that needs to be conducted to see if we can finally get it. Well, not finally, but do better about getting it right. So a vote for me is a vote for yourself. $1 for me is $1 for yourself, because we want you to immigrate to Memphis. Hopefully you'll be a legal immigrant, so we don't have to round you up. But come on through to the holy Mississippi River, and we have the opportunity for heavy industry, trade, high-paying jobs, education, smog-free, traffic-free, and it'll be crime-free, because I know how to deal with that. I've done it before. We will do hydroelectric generation of power, and we will have a great place if vision can be restored. Thank you. Now
Thank
I've
you.
got to get out of here. I
Yes.
got to go. This has been Judge Joe. Call me or catch me when you can, since I'm the one that ran.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your day.